Hey everyone, in this simple stitch series video, I'm going to show you how to do the rib stitch and a few variations of the rib stitch. If you're new to knitting and have just learned the knit stitch and the purl stitch, that's really all you need to make different variations of the rib stitch. So the rib stitch is nothing but alternating knit purl stitches, and it provides a fabric that's really nice. It lays flat. It looks identical on both sides. Here I have a scarf that I'd made with alternating colors using just the 1:1 rib stitch, as in one knit, one purl. And there's a couple different variations of the rib stitch that you can do to get like a sort of a welted rib stitch, or a rib stitch that has an alternating row of purls. And so I'll show you these variations. Here I have a pair of mittens where you can see I've actually incorporated both types of rib stitches. I've done a simple rib at the top, and then I've done a sort of a variation of the rib which does give a different look on the inside, and then this is what the outside would look like. And then here's a simple hat that I knit in the flat, and I'll actually do a video on some of these projects in the upcoming weeks. But this one here, I've used sort of the welted rib that's got a 2:2 type rib pattern, and it also looks different on the wrong side, and then this is what the right side looks like. So I will show you how to do these. It is very, very simple. And to do the simple rib, the 1:1 rib, you do need an even number of stitches. And so I've already cast on a few stitches here, and I've knit a little bit. So I'll just go ahead and continue on with the pattern. So cast on an even number of stitches, and all you're doing in the 1:1 rib is you're doing one knit. So just a regular knit, then bring the yarn forward to do a purl. So all you're doing is knit one, purl one, all the way through. And the best part of the rib stitch, the 1:1 rib stitch, is every single row is the same. If you have an even number of stitches, which it helps to have an even number of stitches. You don't have to have an even number. You could do a rib stitch with an odd number of stitches. But then you have to sort of alternate the pattern, or you'll end up with a moss stitch. So I've provided the variation, or the pattern for how to knit the rib stitch if you have an odd number of stitches, and then I've also provided the pattern for how to knit it if you have an even number. So if you have an even number, all you're doing is knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one, all the way to the end. So you end with a purl one, and then you flip your work and you continue on doing the same exact stitch or pattern for the next row. Knit one, purl one, and that's it. Now I'm going to finish this row, and I'll show you one variation of this that you can do to get a little bit of a tighter rib. And rib stitches, especially this 1:1 type rib, works really well for like projects where if you want to knit the cuff of a sock or a sweater arm, or just the base of a sweater, it works really well for those kinds of edges. Now a rib stitch, you'll notice that it actually scrunches up your work, okay, because it actually has a lot of flexibility or a lot of give to it. All right, but if I was to cast the same number of stitches and just do a garter stitch, my piece will actually measure a little bit bigger than what it's measuring here, because the rib stitch tends to scrunch things up. And so this is just a regular knit one, purl one. Now you can vary this and do knit two, purl two, knit two, purl two, knit two, purl two, knit two, purl two. As long as you have a multiple of 4 stitches, then you can do that each row, and then you'll get a 2:2 rib. So your work will look a little bit, you'll have 2 knit stitches and 2 purl stitches next to each other. So those are just your simplest simplest rib stitch variations, a knit 1 purl 1, or you can do a knit 2 purl 2. You could also do a knit 3 purl 3, in which case you want a multiple of 6 stitches to be able to do knit 3 purl 3, knit 3 purl 3, ending on a purl 3, and then you flip and you do the same thing all over again. So you can do a rib stitch with lots of different with really pretty much any number of knit stitches and purl stitches, as long as you repeat the same number of knit stitches and purl stitches to get an even rib. Okay, now this variation here is where on the one row you're still doing a knit 1 purl 1, but on the following row you're just purling all the stitches back. So again, just to show you quickly, on row 1 you're still just doing a knit 1 purl 1, give myself a little bit more yarn here, and if you're new to knitting, just remember as you're going from a knit 1 to a purl 1 that you remember to take the yarn back for the knit, bring the yarn forward to do the purl. Once you've mastered knit and purl stitches, this will sort of come naturally. Now remember, these are not yarn overs or yarn forwards or anything like that. They're just where the yarn should sit when you go to do the knit stitch or go to do the purl stitch. Okay, so your first row is the same, a knit 1 purl 1, but then on your second row you're just doing a purl all the way across. Okay, and so by doing that you get a little bit of a variation where your fabric that you're producing no longer looks reversible like the 1:1 rib that we just saw. It actually has a different look on one side versus the other side. So here is what the one side looks like. I don't know if you can see very well because this yarn is a little bit dark, but here's what the one side looks like, and then here's what the other side looks like. And that was the pattern that I'd used for the little mittens that I showed you earlier, where you can see when I flip the mitten over, you'll see that the flip side also actually doesn't look too bad. So you could use these mittens reversibly and use this as the outer side as well, because the pattern I think looks pretty either ways. And so that's sort of a variation on the 1:1 rib to get sort of a broken rib pattern. And then you can do the same thing but with a 2:2, where you're just knitting 2 stitches, purling 2 stitches, knitting 2 stitches, purling 2 stitches. So you would just go like that, and you would knit 2 stitches, and you would purl 2 stitches, and just keep doing that all the way through. And then once that row is over, on the next row you're just going to purl all the way. So this one and this one, they're both essentially like a broken rib. This one is called a welted rib, and it provides, again, it gives you a sort of a flat pattern again that looks different on the back side. It's not a reversible pattern, but still pretty to look at and still plenty of give. Okay, now just to get you back to the 1:1 rib, I just wanted to show you a variation that you could do to make this rib just a little bit tighter. So to do that variation, let me get these out of the way. To do that variation, you want to knit the knit stitch through the back loop and purl the purl stitch just the regular way. Okay, so I'm going to insert the needle. Now normally we would knit in the front. I'm going to insert the needle in the back loop of this first stitch, and I'm going to knit just regularly. And then I'm going to bring the yarn forward and I'm going to purl. And all the way through we're doing that. So take the yarn back, but remember, don't knit through the front loop, knit through this back loop. So insert and knit and purl. And if you do that, then you'll get the same kind of rib stitch, but it'll just be a little bit more tighter. So if you want a tighter cuff or a tighter edging to a sweater or something like that, then you can try this variation of knitting the knit stitch through the back loop but purling the purl stitches regularly. And you would do that pretty much for every row. So that's just another variation of the rib stitch. I hope this video will help you master the rib stitch, and if you have any questions, please leave me a comment. If you have suggestions for videos, also please leave me comments, and if you want to watch more videos, please subscribe to my channel, Knittycat's Knits. Thanks for watching and happy knitting!